The lecture hall fell silent as Combat Instructor Vex'thara clicked her mandibles together in what the other species recognized as amusement. Her 8 eyes scanned the assembled cadets, pausing on each face with the predatory patience of someone who had trained warriors for 300 cycles. "Now," she said, her voice echoing off the obsidian walls, "we discuss weapons theory. Specifically, the biological limitations that govern combat efficiency across all known civilizations." A young Korthian in the front row raised one of his 4 arms tentatively. Vex'thara gestured for him to speak. "Instructor, what about the dual-wielding techniques mentioned in the ancient texts?" The instructor's laugh came out as a series of clicks that made several students flinch. "An excellent question. Let me be perfectly clear about this, cadet. Dual-wielding is a myth. A fantasy. A ridiculous notion perpetuated by entertainment holos that have no basis in actual combat reality." She moved to the holographic display, pulling up anatomical diagrams of various species. "You see, the neural pathways required to independently operate 2 separate weapons simultaneously while maintaining spatial awareness, defensive positioning, and tactical assessment? Impossible. The brain simply cannot process that much information. Every species that has attempted it has failed spectacularly. The Draxans tried it in the War of 6 Moons. Half their warriors died because they couldn't coordinate their own limbs properly." Marcus Webb sat in the back row, barely containing a smile. The human exchange student had been quiet for most of the semester, observing, learning, taking notes. His fellow cadets had largely ignored him. Humans were new to the Galactic Combat Academy, and most species considered them, well, unimpressive was putting it kindly. "The physiological requirements are simply too demanding," Vex'thara continued, warming to her subject. "Split attention, divided motor control, bilateral coordination beyond standard parameters. No species has the cognitive capacity. None. This is established fact, backed by 17,000 years of military science." Marcus raised his hand. Several heads turned to look at him, surprise evident on alien faces. The human rarely spoke up during theoretical discussions. "Yes, Cadet Webb?" Vex'thara's tone suggested mild curiosity mixed with the expectation of an easily dismissed question. "Instructor, when you say no species can dual-wield, do you mean no species in this room? Or no species that exists?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Vex'thara's mandibles twitched, a sign of irritation among her kind. "I mean exactly what I said, cadet. No species. Anywhere. The biological limitations are universal." "Right," Marcus said slowly, standing up. "Just wanted to clarify that before I completely invalidate your entire lecture." The room erupted in a mixture of gasps, nervous laughter, and one Vrelian's translator repeatedly spitting out what could only be curse words. Vex'thara's skin shifted from its usual green to a dangerous shade of orange. "Cadet Webb, are you challenging 17 millennia of established combat theory?" "No, ma'am," Marcus replied, walking down the aisle toward the training floor. "I'm about to embarrass it." Another student, a Peltharian named Quirk whose translator gave him a perpetually cheerful voice despite his species' natural aggression, leaned toward his neighbor. Did he just imply he can do the impossible thing?" "He did," whispered Lissa, a Tyrellian with 6 sensory antennae that were currently vibrating with excitement. "This is either going to be amazing or we're about to watch someone get expelled in the most entertaining way possible." Vex'thara descended from her platform, all 8 eyes now focused entirely on Marcus. "Very well, Cadet Webb. The training floor is yours. We have practice weapons in the armory. Single-blade standard combat protocols. Show us what you believe you can do." "Oh no," Marcus said, reaching the weapon racks. "If I'm going to prove a point, I'm going to prove it properly." He selected 2 swords. Not the light training blades used for standard drills, but full-weight combat models. Each one was designed for two-handed use by most species. The metal gleamed under the harsh lights, and Marcus tested the weight of each blade with movements so casual they seemed almost disrespectful. Cadet Webb, Vex'thara said, her voice dropping into what her species used for warnings, "Those weapons are not meant for." Marcus spun both swords in perfect synchronized circles, the blades singing through the air. Then he shifted, and the weapons moved independently. Different patterns, different speeds, different trajectories, all flowing together like water. The room went dead quiet except for the whistling of steel cutting air. "So," Marcus said, the swords never stopping their dance around him, "about that definition of impossible?" Vex'thara's skin had progressed from orange to a deep purple that her species usually reserved for moments of extreme cognitive dissonance. Her mandibles clicked rapidly, a nervous tick she had not displayed in over 2 centuries of teaching. "That is," she began, then stopped. Started again. How are you?" Marcus brought both swords to a halt, one held high in a guard position, the other low and angled for a sweeping strike. "I'm sorry, Instructor. Could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you over the sound of 17,000 years of military science crying in the corner." Quirk burst out laughing, his translator turning it into a sound like musical bells, which somehow made it even more inappropriate. Lys's antennae were vibrating so fast they were practically humming. Half the class had their recording devices out, capturing what would undoubtedly become the most shared footage in Academy history. "This is not possible," Vex'thara insisted, but her voice had lost its certainty. "The neural load alone should cause system failure. Your brain cannot process that much independent motor control while maintaining environmental awareness and combat readiness." "Cannot?" Marcus began moving through a combat sequence, both blades working in perfect coordination. Strike high with the right, defend low with the left. Spin, reverse, attack from 2 angles simultaneously. Or should not, according to your models. He stopped directly in front of the instructor, both swords pointed at the ground in a neutral stance. "See, here is the thing about humans that nobody in this academy seems to understand yet. We are not supposed to be good at anything. We are medium-sized, medium strength, medium speed. We have no natural weapons, no armored skin, no venom sacs. We should have died out on our planet before we even invented fire." A Zavranian student named Torx raised one of his 3-fingered hands. "Then how did you survive? How did you become spacefaring?" Marcus grinned, and there was something in that expression that made several predatory species in the room instinctively step back. "We got creative. See, when you tell a human something is impossible, you are not setting a boundary. You are issuing a challenge. You are basically saying, 'Hey, figure this out, I bet you cannot.'" He tossed one sword into the air, caught it behind his back without looking, then used both blades to strike a training dummy so fast the impact sounded like a single hit. The dummy's torso separated from its legs and toppled over. "Humans learned to dual-wield approximately 3,000 years ago," Marcus continued conversationally, as if he had not just destroyed Academy property. "We called them Florentine fighters, sometimes called twin swords or paired weapons. We did it with swords, axes, even firearms eventually. Did it break the rules of neural processing? Apparently. Did we care? Absolutely not." Vex'thara was now making a sound her translator could not interpret, somewhere between a wheeze and a growl. "But the cognitive load. The split attention. The physiological stress." "Yeah, about that," Marcus said, sheathing both swords with movements so smooth they seemed rehearsed, though everyone could tell they were not. "Human brains are kind of weird. We have this thing called neuroplasticity. Our brains rewire themselves based on what we need them to do. You tell us we cannot coordinate 2 weapons? Our brains literally create new neural pathways until we can. It takes practice, sure. Years of it. But impossible?" He spread his hands wide, the universal gesture for case closed. "Marcus Webb," Vex'thara said slowly, and her skin was returning to its normal green. You have just invalidated several foundational principles of combat theory. Do you understand what you have done? Made your class more interesting? Marcus suggested hopefully. You have proven that human combat potential has been severely underestimated. Which means the strategic assessments, the military projections, the entire framework we use for evaluating species-level threat capacity. She paused, and for the first time, something like respect entered her voice. All wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. Lissa leaned toward Quirk again. Are we witnessing a historical moment or the start of an intergalactic incident? Why not both? Quirk replied cheerfully. Marcus picked up the two swords again, this time holding them in a relaxed grip. Instructor, if it helps, humans are really good at one more thing besides proving everyone wrong. And what is that, Cadet Webb? Making friends with people who underestimated us. He offered a genuine smile, one without the earlier sarcasm. We prefer cooperation to conflict. But we are absolutely terrible at accepting limitations that do not actually exist. It is kind of our whole thing. Vex'thara clicked her mandibles together, but this time it sounded almost like approval. Very well. Cadet Webb, you will demonstrate proper dual-wielding technique to the class. Every session. For the remainder of the term. Yes, ma'am. And Webb? Yes, instructor. Welcome to Advanced Combat Theory. Something tells me we have much to learn from humans. As Marcus returned to his seat, sword still in hand because nobody had thought to ask for them back, Quirk whispered loud enough for half the room to hear. I am never, ever telling a human something is impossible again. Smart, Marcus agreed. Very smart. The rest of the class murmured their agreement, and somewhere in the Galactic Combat Academy's vast database, the entry for human combat capabilities was being frantically rewritten by very confused military analysts. Impossible, it turned out, was just another word for not yet attempted by humans.